Ladies and gentlemen, buckaroos and buckarettes, folks, I'm going to start off. I'm Patty Limerick from the Center of the American West, and I am celebrating sort of a 30th anniversary of hanging out with you folks. I think it was 1989 when I was first in your world. And I'm also going to do something of telling you what I say about you when you're not there. I ran into a person this morning who asked me what conference I was going to. I said, water managers. He looked blank on that, and I said, you have to understand that I look at a lot of different professions. Water managers are the people that I look to when I want to see people adapting to changed circumstances. If I want to see professionals who are stuck in the past and not really able to make many changes, I have other places to go. But I won't count them right now, but I have a number of places. But you guys and gals have a capacity to say times have changed, and we might like that or not like it, but we had better be thinking about how we change with that. So that's what I say. That's what I said to the guy who was dazzled, I think, to hear about these people and envied me my day here and tomorrow as well. So I want to say as well that this is a kind of follow-up to the opening speaker who talked about innovation. And there's a very different set of stories of how this group came to the issue of water. We have that excellent title for the session where we are characterized as the historian. Raise your hand when your category comes up here. The historian, the advocate, the scientist, and the inventor. I would like to now have a little guessing game. Which of these members of the panel had to leave the conference for a spell so she wouldn't miss biology class? Well, what a good guess. That's really good. They got it right away. I don't know why we weren't able to hide that better. So I would just also say that for all these different ways in which we came to the issue of water, we do, I believe, have pretty conspicuous common quality in being people who say, you know, we should try that. Or it's worth thinking about, or well, we don't really know if it'll work, but we will never know if we don't give it a try. So I think that's runs through this disparate group here. I've asked them because that's enough for me for a spell, and I felt it would be great for you to start hearing their voices as quickly as possible. So I'm going to have them do quick self-introductions, which relieves you of my voice and gets you to hear them as soon as possible. So Christine, should we start with you?
So my name is Christina Arbogast. I am a native of Colorado and very active in the Water Congress. I spent 6 years on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and have been advocating since 1985, which means I am quite old and very intimidated by this young woman and by Silas in his presentation this morning.
Hi, my name is Selene Hernandez Ruiz. I am a native of Mexico City, and I was transplanted to the US when I was 14 years old. I completed my education in chemistry, and I got a doctoral degree in environmental chemistry focused on water resources, water quality, and currently I am the lab manager for Denver Water.
Hi, my name is Gitanjali Rao. I'm 13 years old, and I'm an 8th grader at STEM School Highlands Ranch, and I love science. So I created a device to detect lead in water faster and cheaper than current techniques that are used today.
Really?
Thank you.
So, it turns out there's an interesting historical fact. I am an historian. She is 13 right now, but the rest of us were once 13, right? We seem to have done some investigation and research and found that out. So we're going to start with the question of what our aspirations were when we were 13 and what we thought our future might be back then. So maybe we'll go, yeah, let's do it this way. Right.
So at 13, I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. And I succeeded in that for about 3.5 years before I ended up being a lobbyist.
When I was 13 years old, I found myself going back to lots of books in a bookcase, trying to understand the environment around me. And I kind of always knew that I wanted to be a scientist of some sort. I really liked math, and I had really good support at school that really fostered that, that learning process. And so one thing led to another one. And I was able to encounter people that helped me reach that goal.
I think we might hold our total expert on 13-year-old, and that's to the last of the speakers. I will say I grew up in Banning, California, on the edge of the desert, and this question was a hard one for me because it requires me to say I was completely oblivious to water issues as a kid in Banning, California, and there is no evidence that as a 13-year-old I saw that my future lead to this place. The only thought I could come up with involving fluids from my childhood, my father had a place called the California Date Shop, and in the 1950s and 1960s, people who were hot and thirsty would drive from Arizona across the desert without air conditioning, and they would stop at my father's date shop where cooling fluids were redemptive to them. And I have occasionally met people who remember my father's date shakes, and that's what I have for my insight as a 13-year-old, which is weak. Now, the expert.
So I'm 13, and my current aspirations right now are to work in the field of genetics and gene editing. That's really my passion at this point, but whatever I do, I want to be able to help other people and create inventions that can make a difference in society. Similar to my lead detection tool, I'd like to keep going on that path and creating even more new technology and new devices that can help make the world a better place.
Okay, well, we can't, well, yes, I know they want to clap again. I can't tell them not to clap.
We can see who the star of this show is.
Yeah, it's, I would like to say a word on behalf of late bloomers. That would be me. So I just want to say that it's so stunning to hear this, but also better late than never is my concluding remark for my own career and aspirations. Now we're going to go to the next question. What difference did you hope to make when you were young? It doesn't have to be specifically 13. Did you get to where you wanted to be and making a difference? Are you just on your way there? And then this question asked by our organizers here, if you didn't exist, would there be a difference? So why don't we start with Selena?
Since I grew up in Mexico City, I saw firsthand the rivers getting dirty, not being able to do physical education because of ozone problems. So I knew at a very early age that I wanted to do something for the environment. And so that turned into marrying my fear of chemistry and water, and I combined those two to do something for the environment, not only here, but thinking about how water issues really connect the entire world, right? In terms of quality and quantity. And right now I have a very important role in what I do for myself, because I see the potential in all these young professionals that are joining the workforce. And so we have a responsibility with them to develop them so that they can be here tomorrow, in charge of these wonderful organizations and institutions that are guarding the quality and the quantity of water. I am satisfied with where I am. I had the opportunity to be mentored by many people, to mentor the ones that are coming right at this moment in place and the future generations to come.
Great.
If I didn't exist, I'm sure and I'm hopeful that others will do the same.
I'm actually going to be desperate through the rest of the conference asking people that question, because that's quite a rough ride when you were asked if you didn't exist, would there be a difference? And I'm glad that all of us took it on, but I'm really eager to hear your responses as well. So don't talk to me at the reception unless you want to tell me the answer to that question. But it's totally worth asking yourself that question. I'll say for myself as an historian, we're breaking up the order a little bit here, I love stories, and I always thought there was a reason to love stories. And so I got to be in this wonderful world where I spend time in a university, but I probably spend more time out in the world with practitioners like yourselves. And the chance to be bringing in historical perspective from time to time, that's great. If you want to, in 2019, I think I can bring you a visit from John Wesley Powell, for instance, who it's the 150th anniversary of his going down the Colorado River, and I have a friend who's a spectacular reenactor, so as an historian, I think I could contribute that to you. So that's been a great experience to have historical perspective be in my toolkit. What has been better than that, I think, has been being a historian, watching all of you go through historic change. That's just the armchair quarterback's delight, to have no customer or client ever call me with a complaint about anything, but to watch people who so bravely go into that world and respond to those concerns and many, many others. So historian as kind of participant observer, that's been great. I never imagined it could be that great. I think several of us have that sense of who knew that you could have the opportunity that came to us. So that's, okay, so Christine, and then I think we were just gonna save you because we always end each of these questions really well here, so, okay.
So I guess what I wanted to do in terms of making a difference was to get people to take time to understand each other better and respect one another better, more. And as a reporter, I would, this is to Patty's point, be able to tell stories about people and present to people who are reading those stories a different perspective, a different life, a different way of moving through our complex world and how people make those decisions. And that's what I wanted to write about as a reporter. And so, you know, while I'm not a reporter, I still feel like my job is so very related to communication and relationship building. And so, yeah, I feel pretty good about where I've gotten in my goal, even though the name of my profession is different than I had imagined. Would the world be different if I wasn't here? I don't know. But one thing I can say is that in lobbying for natural resources, one of the most wonderful things is that you have successes that are actually tangible. It's not a statute, in a book. It's not a philosophical perspective. And so I feel like there has been a difference made, but I've done it working with fantastic teams of lawyers and engineers and others. And those tangible things that make me feel like I have made even a small difference are things like the Mountain Ute Indian Tribes Farm and Ranch Enterprise, the Stagecoach Project, and the Animas La Plata Project. They're tangible. I can touch them. When I visit Steamboat Springs in Durango, I love to go there and touch the water. And because I do think that those things have made a difference, and I'm proud to have been a small part of it.
So I don't know how much younger you're thinking, but no. I have been interested in inventing, or actually I've been interested in science since the age of 3 or 4, ever since I got like this little science kit. And then when I was in 2nd grade, I started to learn about innovation, creating my own types of experiments. And I always loved helping other people, so I kind of applied science to help other people, and that's pretty much the definition of innovation, I thought, at that time. So that's what I kind of look at innovation as right now. So obviously I'm still on my path to hopefully making a difference in society and the world, but I think that at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. You know, I saw problems and knew there needed to be a solution to them, and I wanted to be a part of that solution. So I believe that I've reached my goal up to just one certain point, and it's definitely, there's still way, way more to go. And the other question was, if I wasn't here, if I didn't exist, would the world be different? At this point, again, I honestly don't know, because I've, again, gotten up to this one point, but it really depends on what I do in the future, or what my aspirations are and what my goals are.
I can tell you that one way that the world would be different if you didn't exist is that this panel would not have anywhere near as much charm and power to engage the audience. We know that. And we also, I guess what I would like to say about how I might have made a difference also permits me to give a pretty cheerful first-time public announcement. So at my age, which is 67, I am really interested in this issue that preoccupies all of you, generational transition and how we pass on what meant a lot to us. And so this panel is a most excellent place to say that the place where I think I may make a difference, I don't think anyone will ever calibrate or measure what impact I've had as a historian hanging out with practitioners. I don't know how you would ever count that. But here's a quantitative measure. The Center of the American West, my organization, just got a grant, a 3-year grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation for $800,000 to train young people in doing what I get to do and to share that. Well, thank you. We'll pass that on to the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, because that's really the major force there. But this generational transition thing is so important to us, and I'm hoping that's where I will have made my major difference, is in having a whole bunch of folks out having as good a time as I am. So we're shifting to the next question, which you got us started on with the young people's perspective, generations. I will report a poll that I gave to my students 2 days ago. I asked them if they, I put forward the proposition, which sounds like I was borrowing words from you. Every challenge is an opportunity for problem solving. And I asked them a clicker question. It's anonymous. Do you agree wholeheartedly with that statement? Or is your position, I would like to believe with that, but I can't fully convince myself? Or the third, do you know too much about human nature that makes you think that's probably not a place to work? I'm happy to tell you the first two carried that by a landslide. I was sort of split between the I wholeheartedly agree with it, I'm agreeing with it, I'm going to try, I don't quite know. So that was an amazing view of the 18 to 22-year-old angle in a world that does not seem to me set up every moment to raise their spirits in 2018 and 2019. So with that question, our next one, or the question before us now, is what are the differences in the way you and a whole cohort of younger people see change, or the ability of individuals and people coming together to enact change, and how are you doing it? So that one, I think you should probably lead us off, and it might involve showing your technology.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to point this out. This is the device I created to detect lead in water. You dip this cartridge into the water you want to test, and it connects to a mobile app on your phone, which gives you results of safe, slightly contaminated, or critical of the lead status in your water. These are the interiors. So yeah, a lot of wiring involved. But to answer that question, I would say, obviously being someone who's so passionate about inventing in science, I look up to role models like Miss Selene, who has been mentoring me for almost the past year, I want to say, and I look up to role models who are also, women in science, or somebody who I can look up to and is working in the same field or working with the same technology as me. So those are the people I tend to go to and tend to get answers from, and want to see their point of view on my projects. And that really motivates me and pushes me to create all of these inventions, and knowing that some other people who are so amazing and have worked so long in this field support an idea like this really, it gives me the motivation and it makes me feel really excited about the work that I'm doing. But then apart from that, I like to work in groups and with a whole bunch of people, and like kids my age who are also interested in STEM and innovating, because that also empowers me. And right now, I love working with friends who we're creating inventions right now. Currently, we're working on a drone that can help detect methane levels in the air and send the results back to a smartphone. So that's what we're programming right now. And it's just been so much fun to be a collective group of students who can tackle one problem together. And I think that if every student has some sort of role model or learns to do something like that, then collectively we can go and tackle some of the biggest problems in the world that almost seem impossible, like global warming and the whole cyberbullying crisis. I think that would really, make a big difference in our world in the future.
Do you guys want to say something about the mentoring in young people, and maybe a little reminiscing about how changed this profession is in its inclusion of, and which is to say, you might reminisce about 1985 coming to the Colorado Water Congress, for instance, if you chose.
Well, we've talked about this before, I think, but when I started attending Water Congress meetings in 1985, I was, how can I say this without being disparaging? So please forgive me, but I was by far one of the youngest people in the room and one of the few females. The water community has changed a lot. I think part of that is as we grow, you'll see in this room, there are many young women in many different professions that are related to water. I think that generationally, we see folks, young women and men alike, boys alike, having a greater curiosity, perhaps, than we felt free to have when we were growing up. Certainly, we hoped for certain things to happen. We wished for them. We planned to pursue them. I think the younger generation, particularly, what we're seeing and hearing today, they are persistent about their goals and pursuing their goals. They are insistent that they can reach them. I mean, you listen to this amazing story, and you see that. I think that generationally there's more curiosity, more persistence, and an insistence and just an absolute confidence that if they want to do something, they can. And I think it took my generation a lot longer to come to the conclusion that, yes, you can.
And just to add to that, we are used to hearing the success stories in science, not knowing that there's a lot of trials before we get to that success. So I think what we're talking about is part of the scientific method, right? Only it's translated to the younger generation, right? That they get to hear maybe no once, but that's okay. I'm not gonna get discouraged. I'm gonna try something else. And at some point, I'm gonna try so many different things that one of those things is going to lead me to success. So definitely, I think that there's that grit component, and I feel that there's an obligation for my generation to help those coming along and show them some of the lessons learned and also learn from them, right? I think that that's something that gets lost very often, that we get to teach and mentor, but we also learn a lot from this young generation that it's in its path to success and achieving great things.
I'm going to add from personal experience that I think we are really underutilizing young people in the cause of having civic discussion with respectful disagreement. Several times I have attended conferences on contentious issues where I was the moderator, and I had maybe 3 or 4 18 to 22-year-olds with me. And they were assigned to be heat-seeking missiles during the coffee breaks. And they were to find the people who were most contentious and most angry, and then just say to them, "Hi, I'm a college student. I'm trying to learn about this. Could you help me get a better understanding?" And they neutralized some crabby people at a rate of effectiveness that a middle-aged person with charm as geared up as possible could never have done. So I think if we have situations where we fear a bunch of your elders not behaving so well in a civic discussion, putting you in there could so redeem them and bring them up to a higher level. So by all means, let's have your expertise and invent that, but sometimes just come in and be a uplifting force for people who are not going to probably uplift themselves without your help. So let's just say I would like to have you at every contentious forum I ever take part in for the rest of my time in that, because I know that will go better. Our next question is a really crucial one here, which is to share stories of things we have attempted throughout our careers and the lessons we learned, and to focus on the theme of persistence, the willingness to take things on even when people say no. So, Selena, why don't we start with you?
I have a unique situation. I just mentioned that I was transplanted to the U.S. when I was 14 years old. So a lot of assumptions were made on my behalf about what I could or should not do with my life. And so going back to that persistence is, what is it that society has decided and placed you to be, and the decision that you've made for yourself in terms of, no, this is not where I want to go. This is not going to be decided for myself, and really pursue that, right? And knock on a lot of doors and expect lots of no's, and yet keep going, because there's something greater than you at the end of that goal that you have. So fortunately, there was some yeses, right? Some support, a lot of support from great people along the way, and I'm very grateful for them. And at the same time, remembering that in this path, and looking back, and not just keep looking forward to the goal that you set for yourself, but look behind you and see all this generation of wonderful scientists that have great ideas, and once more, that we can learn from and move forward together with them.
So in the advocacy world, it's these tried and failed stories are a little bit different than they are with the science, in the science world. If we're having a theme about persistence and being told no, I guess I have to use the Animus La Plata project as probably the biggest example in my life's experience. And when I started lobbying in 1985, that was the biggest project that Ray and I had on our plate, and we were part of a gigantic team of tribal lawyers, water lawyers, again, engineers, really good thinkers, who were told at so many steps along the way of negotiating the settlement, and then trying to get the project through Congress, trying to get the funding through Congress, being told it'll never happen. You will never get this done. There's too much opposition, too much controversy, it's too much money. There was always a reason. And we were persistent. And we stuck together, which is you said that you like to work in groups. This is, the strength was in the team sticking together and refusing to accept that it would never happen. So this question of, what happens when you're told no brings a lot of sort of phrases to my mind, like, there's got to be another way to skin this cat, or somebody saying, you can't do this, and saying, oh yeah, well, just watch me. But the thing that comes most to my mind is one of the tribal lawyers, his name was Scott McElroy, and a dear friend of mine. He said something that has stuck with me forever, and I use it a lot in lobbying, and I've even used it with the federal decision makers that I lobby, and that is the path to no is really easy. It's really easy. The path to yes takes work. It takes hard work. It takes teamwork. And so I've learned that lesson very, very well in my career. And I treasure those words from Scott because it's oh so true. And believe me, in working with the federal government, you hear no a lot. And so I just think of those words and try to find the way to skin the cat, say just watch me get this done, and remember that getting to yes is worth the hard work.
So mine is kind of similar and kind of different than both of those stories. So I guess when I was originally creating this device and a lot of my previous ideas and innovations, I've always reached out to experts in the field or somebody who could possibly mentor me or give me a lab space to do some of these tests. And, the first time I email them or call them, it's always like, I'm ready to go. They're going to say yes. They're going to give me everything I need. I just have to show up there, get my test done, and then come back home. And obviously that's not the case. But the first time I ever emailed somebody to have an opportunity like this, the response I got back was something like this. It was, sorry, we don't have the time for this. Try again later, or something like that. And I was super discouraged. I was just so sad, and and then I started to, I was like, let's just send another email and see if they'll answer a couple of these questions that, I had. And they'll respond back to it saying, maybe another time, or something like that. And my initial thought was maybe they don't like the project. But eventually I realized that, they think it's an 11-year-old. At that time, I was 11 when I was originally creating the device, with a science fair project or something that they're just coming up with for fun. And I didn't see my project that way. I looked at it as something that could potentially be in the market in the future. So, but I kept emailing a whole bunch of other people, and it was that same repetitive no. And the first 4 or 5 emails I got back, I was really mad by the end of it. I was like, why is this happening? Maybe they just hate the project. But after that, I said I kind of became immune to it in a way. Like, I was fine with it. I was like, let's just keep going, People are gonna say no. People probably don't like my project. Everyone has different opinions. That's okay. And so I kept emailing a whole bunch of people, and eventually a couple of them responded to my emails, or a couple of them gave me some answers to questions, and it fit together like a puzzle. And that's how I could create a device like Tethys, my lead detection tool. So there were a whole bunch of situations where I got no, and where I was told no, or we don't have the time for this, but I pushed through it after the first few times, because I knew, the worst answer you're going to get is no. You're not going to get anything worse than that, so why not try?
Yes. So I would just like to say, and I don't know that I've really put any time with so many friends in the room, and I don't know that you've heard me complain a lot, and I'll just do this very briefly, but my practices are not entirely normal in the world of academic history. And my people tend to write articles that will be read by other historians. And that is a lot of time and trouble, and you can spend a couple of years writing an article that goes into the Journal of American History, and then maybe 22 people read that article, which is not, and then you have to realize that probably 9 of those people have a different interpretation. So 22 people will read it, and 9 people will rip it apart and say what's wrong with it. So then you have to start the next article. That's a little bit of a parody, but it's got a match there. So my life has been so different, and the sense of connection and people to talk to has been so great, so that when people were discouraging when I was younger, I just thought, and we talked about innocence and naivete, I thought, they don't mean that, or they're not saying that because they have tried it and they know that it doesn't work to try to reach wider audiences. They just have habits, and it's kind of sad to see, and maybe they will change, and then they will be happier, and they won't have just 22 readers of something that took them 2 years to write. So, I guess I thought my cheer would be infectious. I will say, and this is a very unsubstantiated claim in some ways, but I swear to you that Western American historians who are under 50 are much closer, a good share of them are much closer to my view about saying things that could matter to people in the world. And they will have to go through the hoops and the hurdles, but they are so much more drawn to, taken by the notion of a wider audience. So I figure what I have managed to do is to get plenty of exercise, that's important, eat wisely, and outlive the crabby people. So that is my well, that's not going to help you for the short term here, but that's, and so it's turned out to be, I don't know, I think it's a trend, and I think I was just waiting for that trend to, like a surfer waiting for the wave or something, but I think it actually happened there. So now we have just a few minutes where we can ask Gitanjali questions, and I have a very urgent one from my personal enthusiasms. I have to ask you why you like board games so much and how that has sharpened your mind to have the accomplishments you have now.
So if there's one thing you need to know about me is that I'm very competitive. I will do whatever I can to win. So, but the sad part is that both of my parents are amazing at board games. And so I rarely win, that's the thing. And so my favorite board game is Clue. Have you played that?
Now I'm insulted. She has just asked me if I have played Clue, and I'm going to say yes, and I'm so familiar with Miss Garland, Professor Plum, and all the gang, they're Mrs. Green, and so on. And I had the same problem, except I had it worse because I had 2 big sisters. Oh. So I'm a little competitive, and my mother and father and my big sisters beat me in board games for the first 11 years of my life, and one of them was Clue. So yes, have I played Clue, for heaven's sake? That's
So I'm really good at like digging out. So for those of you who played Clue, it's like a game where you're solving a murder mystery pretty much, and like you're trying to figure out who did it, with what weapon, where they did it. And so it's all about like the process of elimination and like the strategies you use to get around it. And so that was really hard for me when I first got the game, but now I've worked around it. So you only write down stuff on your card when you see the card, but based on what everyone else is saying, I'm like marking down things that I know. And so usually when I'm playing with my friends, they're like, how are you done already? But when I play with my parents, they work around me. But I think it's really helped me with like the whole strategy side of things and getting around things, jumping over things. I don't know, something like that. But it's given me like a new perspective at looking at things almost.
Yeah, great. Do you have questions for her? Because I have follow-up questions on board games. But please, if you have a question for her.
Yeah, one of my questions to Gitanjali is, Gitanjali, do you remember the first time that you had a goal in mind and then you didn't succeed the first time, but yet you kept trying? Is that something that you think that you were born with, or that's something that you've developed?
So there are a lot of times where it'll just be some sort of silly mistake or something that I forgot to plug in, and something will be reading zeros, and I'll be just mad, and I'm giving up and stuff like that, and then I'll storm away. But then I always have this intention to come back, and so I'm never away from something. It's just like if I start a project and leave it halfway there, I get really scared. I'm like, what am I gonna do with that? It's still there. It's still going on. It'll just constantly be circulating in my mind. So when I commit to something, I get it done. And so a lot of my projects, I actually don't know where I developed that ability from, of being able to identify things that I want to go back to. But I guess I've always just seen that there's a potential to everything. And again, going back to that previous statement, though, you can always try. The worst thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work, or you're going to get no. But there's no limit to the amount of times you try. And so I kind of just never felt that, I guess that feeling of I'm giving up. I mean, I obviously felt the feeling, but I've never just stuck to that feeling for a long time. So I think it's just an idea of, I know what I want to come back to.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I have ever seen an occasion for a standing ovation, this would be it. And my fellow panelists will lead us in this too. So thank you so much. Thank you.